So this is going to be our shag haircut. I'm going to wet her down first. She's already pretty wet, but she's dried a little bit. I almost always, I'm not going to say always, but cut on wet hair, especially with a razor. You really don't want to use a razor much on dry hair because it can be damaging and it can kind of like shred the cuticle of the hair. So you want to make sure that her hair is at least damp while you're doing this. Not to mention your razor is going to like glide on the hair a lot easier if she's wet. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I figured out how to use the how to find that like triangle. So what I'm going to do is kind of push her hair forward to find her natural part. And this doesn't have to be anything perfect. I'm just kind of getting a feel for how far back her part goes. So if you see on top, her parting stops like right about here. So if I put my finger there and you can see it from the side, it stops right about at like the top, like apex of her head. You don't want your triangle to go too far back because you don't want the layers that you cut here to be falling to the back. This is more meant to be like you're layering for the front of the hair. So I'm just going to take this point and then I'm going to use that and connect it to each side to create my triangle. And where I'm going to want that triangle to live is at about like the outer edges of her eyebrow. So you see right about at her eyebrow, that's like where it's going to be. So it's going to be pretty big. So I'm doing the same thing on the other side. I want to check for symmetry. Let's see. I feel like this side. Everything's reverse on the camera. It's weird. Okay. So I'm just going to take this up, get it out of the way. So you can see I have my my triangle on top. You can see that. And then all I'm going to do is section out her, just a little bit of her front hairline. And this is where I'm going to be giving her kind of that like shaggy fringe in the front. So like I was saying before, if you wanted to give her more of like a modern mullet, you would make this section wider. So right now I'm doing more of like a shag and I'm going to leave it a little bit softer. So I'm really just taking a small portion of this front hairline. But if you wanted to like cut all of this real short and make it real like business in the front, party in the back, then you could take this section and go further back like this. And you would take all of this short and then she'd have that like dramatic longer back. Does that make sense? So I want to just like give you this basic sectioning as like a guide for just like a guide for you to work off of, for you to create, you know, whatever you might want to create. Whenever I'm doing any like haircuts, the first thing I do is I kind of break it down. I do the same with like updos, is I look at the haircut and I break it down into pieces. So I think like this haircut consists of like the fringe, it has like the shaggier pieces around the face, she has like the real shorter layers in the top, and then kind of wispy ends. So I break that all down into my sections. Yeah.
So part of the big triangle is going to be like the short layers on the top, and then like what's left out is going to be like the wispy back part, like the longer part, right?
Yeah, so this is going to be the shorter layers on top, and what I'm going to do all through here is I'm going to make the ends a little bit like wispier and shaggier. I do want to like rewind for a second. The one step I am going to skip, does anyone have any idea?
Your smock.
Okay, my smock. Okay, anyways, I don't have a smock, so not with me. She already has her perimeter cut. You can see that she has like a nice perimeter already. So I'm not going to go through and do that. I've seen all of you do your solid haircuts, and you do them all very well by now. So that's the first thing I would do. If this were like a client coming into the salon, I would go through and trim her perimeter first, because this is actually, this bottom perimeter is going to be the guide for your layers. Let me move her up a little bit. There we go. Okay. So now that I have her sectioned, the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to work on the back and sides for the layers. I'm going to use a traveling guide for this haircut, and I'm going to work in like pie shapings or melon shapings. I think Sonal the other day said orange wedges, whatever you might think of. I think of like a beach ball, whatever makes you visualize it, that's what it is. But basically I'm going to start, everything's going to come to this point at the very top where the tip of her triangle is. That's where everything is going to meet at. So I'm going to come down the back, and I am going to section out my first section. I also like to keep the hair nice and wet while I'm cutting it, because you don't have to use as many clips, because the hair kind of stays on its own. I am going to clip the hair today though, just because I want you to be able to see the sections as well as possible. So on your demo sheet, you should be able to, on the diagram, you should be able to see all the sectioning in the back. So hopefully that will help you to refer to. But does everyone see that? It's like a pie or melon shaping. Okay. So what I am going to do now is I'm going to grab my razor. I'm going to use a new blade. You always want to use a new blade, because first of all, it's more sanitary to use a new blade on every client, and you want a really sharp blade because you're going to get the best cut. So what I'm going to do, I think this layering in the back is super easy. I'm going to hold all of this in my hand, or as much of it as possible, and I'm just going to pull all of this straight back out, just straight towards me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for those bottom pieces to drop out. So this is why I was saying that's kind of your guide to start, is by cutting the perimeter, because you want to make sure that your layers aren't shorter than this piece. If I start cutting and just come straight down and cut into this guide, I'm going to wreck the length of her hair, and I don't want to do that. So I still want to allow her to have some length to her hair. Also, what you want to take into consideration right here is how thick she wants her perimeter to be. There's some shag haircuts that are real wispy at the ends. That way you can just drop out a little bit and you can layer the rest. If you want a heavier guide, you could even drop out from the occipital bone down, and you could layer all of this hair. Does that make sense? Especially when you're thinking about someone's density, how much hair they have, that's going to be like probably one of the biggest things. If someone has pretty thin hair and they still want to do this haircut, you want to make sure you're dropping out a decent amount of the perimeter, or else you're going to end up making her look way too wispy. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab my razor, and I'm pulling all this out. I'm going to angle my fingers out this way. Do you see that? So I'm doing more of like an inverted layer. So that means they're going to be shorter up here at the top, and it's going to get longer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of move as I cut. So I'm cutting behind my fingers, and I'm gonna cut and pull the hair out at the same time. So this is gonna give like a nice like cascading effect to the layers. Okay, so I'm holding these out. You wanna decide where you want your layers to start. So I think right about there will be a good length. Pull this out. So you can see that this haircut is not gonna have like perfect lines to it. You're not gonna have like a perfectly straight guide because we're not using really blunt lines. But you can see, can you see that? Like the general shape of what I'm creating here. Does everyone see that? So the lines aren't nice and sharp, but you should be able to see and find that guide still. So just because you don't have a perfectly straight guide doesn't mean that you should create your own every time. So I feel like that might be, I know for me, I'm like, yeah, this is a creative haircut. I'm just gonna do whatever I want. You will get lost and you will end up making a mistake. So please try to like find that guide still. So I wanna check that. I wanna see how I feel about where the layers lay. So her top layer lays about there. You can see that already gives kind of a cool effect. Okay, so I'm now going to split that in half. This is gonna start my traveling guide. And I can add this over here. And then I am going to use this hair for my next section. So again, I'm working in pie sections. So everything's coming to this point at the very top. So I'm gonna come down. Clip this out of the way. I'm gonna pull this out. I wanna find my guide. So can you see that? Oh, this light. Let me try to move over this way a little bit. There we go. Okay, so I can see these are the ends that I need to cut, and I can see my guide right here. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm pulling all this out. All of that hair is dropping out. That's okay. I'm not gonna touch it because I want a little bit of a stronger perimeter. All right, so I can see my guide up at the top, and I'm gonna do the same thing. Just coming down.
So you're holding your fingers upwards, but you're cutting like straight?
So I'm holding my fingers at an angle kind of pointed towards her head. So it's like a reverse 45. Instead of holding it this way, I'm holding it this way.
Yeah, not cutting with the razor sideways. The razor is just straight. Right?
Yeah, the razor is straight, so I'm holding it this way. Okay. I'm not holding it. Yeah, I'm not holding it like this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm holding it like this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm doing kind of like a scooping motion this way. Okay, so now I'm gonna split that in half, and I'm gonna do the same thing. And you're gonna continue to do this, where you split it in half and then move to the other side, move to the next section, until you get to behind the ear. Because I'm going to treat the hair in front of the ear a little bit differently. Okay, same thing. Pulling all this out. And if you feel like this is too much hair to hold in one hand, that's okay. You can break it down. I don't have big hands, so I a lot of times will break it down into smaller pieces as well. So I'm gonna pull this out. I'm gonna find my guide. And see that piece at the top? There it is. And again, I'm pulling it, cutting it down, a scooping motion.
I'm sorry, Miss Martinez, can you show us like a little bit closer how like the angle of the razor?
So I'm
like,
holding it like
flat?
I'm holding it this way.
Oh, so it's not like the sharp part's like down.
No, the sharp part is facing towards me because I'm holding her hair and I'm just kind of working into her hair this way. I guess it does angle down a tiny bit, but mostly it's faced towards me and slightly angled. So
What would happen if it was straight down, like towards the hair?
If it was straight down, then you're just going to create really like harsher lines in the hair. And the whole purpose I'm using the razor is because I want to create a really like soft effect and really like soft layers. I don't want to create too harsh of lines, and I want it all to blend really nicely. So if I just went straight down, you can do that. That's not a wrong way to do a razor cut, but that's more of a way you would create like a blunt cut on the razor, and maybe not something to this effect.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you can start to see like the effect that kind of gives. So she's got these like shorter layers that are popping up. Okay, and I'm going to continue on. Again, I'm going to take a little bit from that section, move this over.
Miss Martinez, is inverted layers same as concave layers?
Yes, yeah. Okay, pie shapings. Okay, and you guys can see now that I'm getting to like right behind the ear. So this is going to be my last section that I do this way. So I'm still working in pie shapings, so you can see that on top. And I've pivoted to just behind the ear now. But again, I'm gonna do the same thing with this, pull this all out. And you may start running out of hair at this point, just because the hair gets thinner as we move to the front of the hairline, and that's okay. Again, if you don't see any hair to cut, don't cut it. All right, gonna find my guide. I have my, yeah, Hannah, so my razor is angled slightly down, slightly down. It's almost like you're like carving into the hair. You're really like doing like a carving motion. Okay, so now I am going to work on the portion right here. So between this front portion that we sectioned out and behind the ear. Does anyone have any idea why I'm going to treat this hair differently than the rest?
That's the transition from the shorter hair to the longer hair in the back.
Yes, that is a good point.
I was thinking like blend, like the short to the like the hair back here from like the one on the side.
Yeah, yeah. So that is really important because obviously we're going to be cutting this shorter in the front. We want it to all blend. But what I'm really trying to avoid is creating a hole. If I just pull this straight out and cut it to match my previous guide, what's going to happen is I'm going to end up cutting into this hair over the ear because it's going to be shorter. And she's going to end up having a big skip in her hair right here. So it's going to come up and it's going to get too short over the ear, and then I'm going to be left with hair that doesn't blend in the front unless I take it really, really short. So what I'm going to do with all of this is instead of pulling it straight out, I'm going to over direct it back. So I just cut this hair like behind the ear. So I'm now going to take my next pie section. So again, I'm still working from this point at the top back here where my triangle is. You can see. So I'm going to go from that point to kind of the top of the ear now. Hold that with my comb. Okay. And then I'm going to go on to my previous section. And instead of pulling this all straight out, instead of pulling it straight out like this, the best way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to direct it back a little bit. So instead of this way, I'm going to pull it back slightly. And what I especially want to check for is that the hair on the bottom, the hair around the perimeter of her hairline is dropping out. So
Sorry, I had a question about the section. So you said, so when you first start, you do the middle one like watermelon slice or melon slice.
Yeah.
Then once you start going to the sides, it's just like a bigger triangle. Like this is the first one. I don't know if you can. but then you start doing more of this.
So everything, basically what you're gonna do is it starts in the back this way, and then everything is gonna turn. Imagine like a beach ball, like how the little pieces on the beach ball go around. So eventually your sections are gonna kind of start to get horizontal.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So they kind of think of it as like they're literally pivoting around this same point on the head. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this hair out. I'm pulling it slightly back. And what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna scoop that hair out over her hairline. I'm just gonna scoop it out just to be certain that I don't cut into the hairline. And I'm gonna find my guide, which I can find. And I'm gonna cut that layer. Okay.
Why do you have to hold it at like an angle like toward like the back? Like why can't
Towards
like
the back?
pull the hairs out from underneath so you don't get the hole? Why can't you do it?
If I pulled the hair straight out from the head instead of pulling it back, I'm gonna create a hole over the ear. Because what happens is we have in the back, we have hair all the way from up here down to the nape of our neck, right? So there's like a long portion where we have our hair. When we get to over the ear, you only have hair from here to here, and then it stops. So that means we're missing all of this. If I just try to match the hair from here to the back without pulling this hair back, there's gonna end up being a big hole that I create right under the ear. That's something that honestly made me so mad during cosmetology school. I did not understand what a hole meant. I wanted to yell at my haircutting teacher because I was like, what are you talking about? A hole? She's not missing any hair. That's how her hair is. So if you don't understand that concept right now, that is totally fine, because I put a lot of holes in people's hair, and that's how I learned. So it's okay. I mean, we're here to make mistakes. If you put a hole in your hair today, I don't really care. It's fine. I'm just showing you that this is the way to not put a hole in the hair.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then I'm gonna continue forward, and chances are you're gonna start running out of hair at this point to cut, so your sections will you could end up just taking bigger sections. But do you see how this section now has gone from going this way to they kind of turn, and now they're angled this way? So I'm just gonna pull that hair back. I'm gonna find my guide. I can find those shorter layers. Okay. And then the last piece, I'm again pulling this back.
I'm sorry, I have another question.
It's okay, go ahead.
How do you know how much to pull back?
I just make sure that you're pulling back so that you're pulling the hair to behind the ear. If you're still over the ear, then you didn't pull back far enough. So you want to make sure you're pulling back towards this back side of the head.
Straight, okay.
Yeah, if you're pulling it just slightly back like this and you're still over the ear, you're still going to end up creating a hole.
So you should always see your ear.
Yeah, you should see that.
You don't see, you're wrong. Right?
Exactly. Okay. That's probably a good rule to go by. Okay. Sorry, my camera keeps doing that. Okay, so I'm gonna do the same to the other side. But do you see the effect that it's kind of given now? So she has sort of this dramatic shorter layer, and then her ends are a little more wispy now.
Miss Martinez, what if you don't hold the hair at 90 degrees angle, straight out? What if you lift up higher? Does it make a more dramatic layer?
It doesn't make it just depends on how short you cut that top layer. If I'm directing this hair up this way, what's gonna make the layer shorter is how short I go on the head. You could also do that. This is just another way of layering. I just like
So
to do
it'll-
this because I like to be able to blend my top layer into my bottom as best as possible. And if I pull all this hair up, then this hair falls out like really, really easily.
Yeah, I think, isn't that like the Rachel haircut? Like,
Yeah, exactly. Okay, now I'm just gonna do the same to the other side. So I'm just gonna move a little bit more quickly towards, for this side. Okay. And I'm gonna find my guide. Has anyone tried any like razor cutting on like a real person yet at all?
Too scared.
Too scared. I was really scared of the razor at first too, and I always had heard that it was like really damaging for the hair. And I think that just all depends on like how you cut the hair, and that you're making sure that you're keeping the hair wet. But it can give like
just for a quick FYI, once I started using a feather razor and I had some training in it, I made every single one of my clients for 2 full years get a razor cut, whether they liked it or not.
yeah.
I loved it. And they
It's honestly, it's just really fun. Like it's like
they're like, can we use the scissors again, please, sometime?
yeah, you get kind of addicted to it. You want to do everything with the razor because it really is fun. I feel like I'm like carving or like sculpting the hair when I'm using the razor rather than the shears, because it just like glides so nicely through the hair, and you can just create such a different effect. You can fully do this haircut with a shear, but it just wouldn't look exactly the same.
Miss Martinez, what do you mean that it's damaging to the hair?
Well, because what I'm doing is I'm using a blade and I'm just sliding it across the hair to cut it. If with your scissors, you're just opening and closing them and actually cutting the hair, so that's not creating any damage. But if you're using a razor and just sliding it onto dry hair, it's going to shred the cuticle of the hair. So that's why you want to make sure you're using a new razor and that it's really sharp. And also, you just have more slip with the hair when it's wet.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Does anyone have any like more questioning on the sectioning with the back? I feel like it looks more complicated than it is with the like melon or pie shapings. For me, I find it easiest to work off of like a pivot like this because I always know where to go back to. So I'm pulling all this back.
Miss Martinez, would you say like the angle you hold the hair, it's decided upon how short you want that top piece to be?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If I wanted like this really, really short, then I would hold my fingers at like an even, almost like flat angle, because I would be taking that top layer really short and then like scooping it outwards. If you wanted to create like more, what this is doing is creating more of like a heavier layer on top and leaving length below. But if you wanted to do like more layering throughout, like more layering towards the bottom too, which would make the ends thinner, you could do like a steeper, more of like a 90-degree, and just go kind of more straight down. Okay, so this is getting like on top of the ear now, so I'm pulling the hair back. So you see how I'm pulling it back? Like Tatiana said, I can see the ear. So I'm over directing it back onto the back of the head. And then this last section, same thing. Should be able to see the ear. Find my guide. And then the biggest thing with over directing over the ear is making sure that you over directed the same on both sides. Because if you pulled back further on one side than the other, then that side's going to be longer. So I always want to go back and make sure that the two sides are balanced. I feel like I always thought when I was in cosmetology school that once I was like good enough, I wouldn't have to check my haircuts anymore, because I was so sick of having people check my haircuts and having to check my own haircuts. And then I realized that it never ends, and you actually just get really fast at checking and correcting your own haircuts. Okay, so I'm gonna check the layering. So it looks really balanced. And again, since this was cut with a razor, I'm not gonna see any like harsh lines, so I can't really, you know, if I try to pull the hair out and check it, there's not gonna be like a perfect line to look for. But you should be able to see the same like general shape. If I pull this out, you can see that she's like angled outwards. Okay. So can everyone see that? She's got some like shorter layers on top. You can see kind of the like side view. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is I am going to cut this top part. So I'm gonna move her down a little bit. And I'm gonna use a piece from back here as my guide for the top. So you literally just need to go to the top of your triangle, right here, and just pinch a little piece of hair, and that is your guide. It doesn't need to be anything perfect, but you're just gonna take that, and you're gonna know that that's the length that you need to blend with the top. So again, if you look at that diagram, you can see that for the top section, I'm also gonna be working in like triangular or melon-shaped, pie-shaped sections. So I'm gonna start with a triangle in the middle, and I'm gonna section that off, and then I will show you.
So we should do partings as a customer wear the sides, right?
For this haircut,
Like not everybody wear it in the middle, you know.
that's true, but I would still create your triangle on top. I wouldn't do it onto the side, because then it's gonna create like a weird balance. This haircut should be pretty, like, even though it has like kind of jagged and uneven ends, it's still gonna be balanced throughout. And so she should be able to move her parting around wherever it is. If you did your triangle on the side, then she's gonna have like a lopsided, like one side's gonna be heavier than the other. So I would like almost always do this down the middle still. And then again, that is where your like fine tuning comes in. Then you could blow dry, you can see like, oh, this side does look heavier because she parts it on the side, and maybe you're gonna take more weight out on that side.
Okay.
Okay. So now I am going to cut the top part. I'll show you how I sectioned out the top. So does everyone see that? So I took like a pie shape or like a triangle right out of the middle. So it comes to like a point at the top. Everybody see that? Okay. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take that section from back here, that's gonna be my guide, and then I'm gonna pull this hair up. Do you see how there's like, that's what I'm gonna be cutting. So I want it to match with that. So I'm gonna comb this hair straight up. And then I'm gonna take that little piece and I'm gonna angle the hair this way. So it goes from short to long. So it'll be longer in the front. So this is the angle you're gonna be cutting at in the front. If you can't see your guide, then maybe take a bigger piece. But I can see, can everybody see that? I can see this shorter piece right here. That's what I'm gonna be blending off. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lift my fingers up until that piece falls out. You can see that's that piece right here. And then I'm gonna start cutting upward. Again, some of this hair fell out of my fingers, so I'm gonna continue with that upward motion. So if I go back and comb all this hair straight up, you'll see now that it has like an upward shape to it. You see that? Okay, and I can see I missed a little piece. I know you all have different razors than this. I know you use I don't know what that one is called. This is the feather razor. What is it called, Miss Lido?
It's just a standard razor that they use for like that they take to state board or yeah, straight edge razor.
So I changed my hand position when I did these top layers. So when I'm cutting the bottom, I had my pinky on the tang like this, and I had the blade facing down. But in order to make that layer, I would have to do some real awkward like hand positioning. So all I did was I flipped it around. So I don't have a tang to set my finger on anymore, but I just kind of choked up on the back. I just put my fingers closer to the razor, but my razor is now facing the top. So I'm kind of, again, scooping the hair upward. So we scooped down, and then now we're gonna scoop up this way. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same as I did in the back. I'm gonna split that hair in half, and I'm gonna start another traveling guide. So splitting that in half, I can add that to my other section. And then again, I'm gonna take pie sections. So I'm gonna work off that back point again. So you can see this is the section I have now. And I'm just gonna comb her straight up. I'm gonna make sure I can see my guide. And I'm pulling this, again, straight up from the head. I'm not over directing it at all. So I'm gonna find my guide. There she is right there. And I'm gonna start cutting in an upward motion. This section's kind of big, so I'm gonna do one little section and then the next. So when you get to the front, I'm not cutting very much, and that's okay because that's why I'm gonna go back and do my fringe afterwards. So again, I'm gonna slice that in half. And then I'm gonna take the last chunk right here of my triangle. And I'm going to lift that up. I'm gonna find my guide every single time if she's not there. So there she is. And I wanna like reiterate too that this haircut is not meant to be like it's not gonna be perfect. If you're looking for like perfectly straight lines, you're not gonna find that. So I think a lot of times we can be really hard on ourselves when we're learning something new, and it's very important to remember that this haircut is meant to be really like loose and
textured.
Yeah, really textured. And so if things are not as perfect as you want them to be, that's okay, because it's probably means you're doing it right.
It's not a precision haircut. It's just
Exactly, not at all.
Textured haircut.
Not at all. I thought this would be kind of something fun to learn because obviously when we're first learning to cut hair, you really have to learn to cut more precisely because you have to understand the different shapes. And so I thought this would be sort of a more like fun kind of advanced technique for all of you to learn. Okay, same thing with this side. I'm not seeing my guide, so I'm going to take a little bit more. There she is. Again, straight out from the head. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about the sectioning on the top? I know I can't. It's a little bit harder for me to show you. All right, again. So can everyone see? So there's not a perfect guide, but do you see how you can see the like density change? Do you see that like line within there, how the ends are thinner? So that's my guide. It's not a perfect line, but I am following something. I'm not just cutting to cut. I'm actually like looking for something. Okay, then on to my last section. Pulling this straight out. Okay. Okay, and that is the top. Okay, so let's take a look at her. So obviously her front is really long still. We left it that way on purpose, but we can kind of see the shape that's starting to happen in her hair. She's a little bit more textured on top, but her layers are really kind of loose and piecey. So now I'm gonna go in and I'm going to do her fringe. Fringe or bangs. I feel like fringe is a fancier word to use when you're like talking to your clients. But fringe and bangs mean the same thing. So here again, this could be another difference where if you're wanting to go more towards like a mullet, you can start your fringe further back. If you took a wider section, where's my side? If you wanted to go more mullety and you took this section further back, you would start your bang further back as well, because you're gonna be creating a really short look all through here, all through this top. I'm not gonna create that. I'm not gonna have my fringe go that far back, but I am gonna have it still be pretty heavy because I do want it to be like a real like shag haircut. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna part her down the middle. And I'm gonna kind of see where her hair wants to like fall forward and look at the top of her head. So I can see like, you see how the hair right here is falling to the sides, and this hair right here is starting to want to kind of fall forward. So you want to take notice of things like that when you're cutting someone's hair, so you can see like where you might start their bang at. If I tried to start her bang all the way back here for this, and I just wanted it to be a bang, then what's going to happen is this hair is going to end up flopping back and it's going to be doing all sorts of weird stuff. So I am going to start right about here for her fringe. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take that point and I'm going to connect it to those side pieces, because those are still in the clips as well. So do you see that? So you can kind of see that those are connecting now. So that's that side. And then the other side, I'm going to start from the same point.
So you do smaller triangle or like a round?
So this is a little bit rounder. And yeah, for this one, I don't want it to come to a dramatic point. I want it to be like a little bit rounder.
Okay, and how smaller is in a half that you had before?
So here you can kind of see. So remember when I did the triangle, I started at the very back of her part. So you can see her parting still goes all the way to back here, right?
So it's like 2 inches, huh?
Yeah, so there's like this much of a difference.
Okay.
But you can see it is pretty thick still. Like it's still a pretty significant amount of hair. So I'm gonna pull all this hair in the back out of the way just for less confusion. clip that. Okay. And for me, this is the fun part, and also maybe like the most important part. So you don't want to mess up someone's bangs, because you'll mess up someone's life. It's like messing up someone's eyebrows. Okay. And so again, I'm just going to leave these sides clipped in. It kind of fell out a little bit, so I'm just going to re-clip them. And I am now going to work on this fringe area. And so what I'm going to do with this, tilt her head down, is I am going to, again, work in pie sections. That's the theme of the day, I guess. Or maybe I just really want some pie. Okay, so I'm gonna go start from the point at the top, and I'm gonna make like a little slivery triangle. So real thin triangle. And this part's gonna be a little bit funny. When I like see this haircut a lot, what I see is I feel like people will do a real kind of like wispy center and then have the edges be a little bit heavier. So they have kind of these like wispier pieces that live in the middle, and then these like heavier curtains. So what I like to do with this middle piece is I like to layer it. So what I do is I pull this piece straight out from the head, like it was like a unicorn horn. I pull it straight out. I don't want to pull it down too far or pull it up. I want to pull it straight out from where it lives. And I'm going to angle it just slightly like that. And again, I'm going to do that with my razor. Because I'm cutting from the top of the head again, I am holding my blade going upwards while I'm cutting this. And I'm going to do the same kind of like scooping upward motion. So you want to be careful with bangs, because people can tend to cut them too short when they're wet, because your hair shrinks when it dries, right? Has anyone ever had their bangs cut too short? Especially anyone with curly hair? It's the worst, and it feels like it takes forever for them to grow back out. So I always err on like the longer side when I'm cutting someone's bangs when they're wet, and then you could always make them shorter after you dry them. So what I'm going to do is I want to find out where I want, where I want this piece to land. And I'm going to leave it a little bit longer than that. Okay, so I want it to land kind of like maybe right around at her nose. So that's going to be right about there. And then I'm going to have it angle upward from there. And so what that's going to create is it's going to make like a little bit of a shorter interior and then like kind of longer pieces that come down over it. So it just creates like a really like nice wispy effect in the middle. So she wanted them right about here. Try to angle this the best I can. And I'm going to angle it out this way. And again, do the same kind of like scooping effect. I'm going to check that. Do you see that angle that I created? Yeah. Okay, so then you can see when I bring her down and I just pull this piece down, it gives like a nice little like wispy effect. Instead of just pulling, I could have just pulled all this down, and that's not wrong either. This is just the way I like to do it. Oh my gosh.
So when you split, the bottom is the shortest part, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the bottom is a little baby bit shorter. But mostly this just gives like a little bit of like layering effect to it so that it's not too like heavy. And actually I think I might want to angle that even more so, because if I look where this piece lands, it lands like almost right on top of it. So I actually want to make it a little bit wispier. And you can kind of do this. I do this all the time. I'll like find that point where I want to cut it. I'll cut it. I'll look at it. I'll ask my client what they think, and you can continue to adjust. It's better to like keep that communication going and like testing things out rather than like acting like everything's fine and then making like a huge mistake. So I'm just gonna take off a tiny bit more. Okay, so now that's gonna be kind of my guide for the rest of the bangs. So what I'm gonna do next is I am going to create my next triangle. So I'm gonna come down this way and I'll show you that. Section that out of the way.
Miss Martinez, will you show us how to style in that bangs?
Style them, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's all I'm really gonna have time for is to show you how to style the bangs. But do you see how I still had it all come to this point right here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So basically this whole haircut ends up like pivoting off of this same point in the center of the head.
Yeah.
So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna push this out of the way, but I'm gonna pull this down and also I'm gonna dampen her hair a little bit because she's getting dry. I'm gonna pull this straight down. And you wanna use kind of loose tension. A lot of times people have more like texture around their hairline and like you really don't want to pull everything real tight around the like face, especially for bangs. You want to use looser tension. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this down. Do you see the shorter piece in the center now? There? So that's gonna be my guide. So I'm gonna cut this on an angle. And this is where you can get creative, whatever you want to do. You can do a steeper angle and create like these really like cascading long bangs, or I could just do a slight angle like this. And I can make it more of like a heavier like front fringe like that. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna have them angled a little bit steeper like that rather than angling it so much. So I'm pulling this down. I'm gonna find that little piece, I'm gonna let it drop out, and then I'm going to come across. So I'm kind of coming at the hair and like chipping at it with like the edge of the razor, rather than just coming in flat and cutting straight on. I'm kind of using the end of it to like chip away at it. Okay, now I'm gonna do my next section. I'm gonna take my next triangle. So same thing. Next triangle. And I'm gonna bring this hair down. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying not to get in the way, but. Okay, and then I'm gonna take that last section and do the same thing. Pull it all straight down. So you can see this is gonna create like a pretty heavy fringe. Same thing.
Why you're not cutting like the same as a guide?
As the guide, because I'm angling it. So that guide that I cut is just the center point, and I want the center to be shorter, and I want it to cascade down. And I want it to go from short to long.
No layering on the rest.
Oh, why don't I cut it the same? You know, I'm not gonna do that right now, but when after I go through and fine tune it a little bit, I will do a little bit of layering.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's stuff that you can do. I worry about doing too much layering in the bangs, again, while it's wet, because it's so easy to mess up people's bangs when they're wet. It's like so easy. I prefer to do the majority of my bang and fringe cutting when it's dry. So I like to do a pretty like rough, basic bang fringe cut, and then when it's dry, that's when I go in and do like more details. Okay, I'm gonna work in my triangles on this side. I'm gonna wet her again. And so you wanna make sure you're using the same angle on this side. So I'm gonna be coming in this way. I don't know how to not be in front of the camera. There we go.
But you should stay the front of it, huh?
Stay in the front? Oh, yeah. Yeah, when you're cutting the bangs, you should stand in the front for sure. Okay, and then that last piece right here. Again, I'm gonna find, so you can see there's that guide. And then I'm just gonna blend that. That's the last little piece.
Miss Martinez, is the thick bang that's making it called a shag? Otherwise, it'll be just like a concave layer.
You know, I feel like the front, like layering or like bang really does is what makes it like a shag. You know, if you just have like some shaggy layers in the back and like longer layers in the front, then it's not so much a shag. But you know, there are many versions of everything. It's really hard to put anything in like a specific
So like the signature is more in the bang though, right? Would you say?
I would say yes. Okay, so now we have these front pieces that we haven't touched this entire time. And you can also decide what you want to do with these. If you want to leave these real long and like disconnected, you can do that. If you like the look of this real short bang and then this kind of like drop in length, like I think that looks really cool. If you also want to try to blend it some, like you can see how there's that shorter length in here and then it gets longer. You can try to angle that some. You could even take all of this like real short too. You can take it real short and then this will come around and be like longer around it. And so that way when she pulls her hair back, she'll have this kind of cool, like these cool short shaggier pieces in the front. So I'm just gonna blend these pieces out a little bit. So I'm just gonna take my razor down and just kind of chip away just to get it to blend some.
How would you make it into a mullet? Or
If I were doing a mullet, I would cut this all real short.
oh, just real short? Okay.
Yeah, I would cut it really short, and then the back and the front and the back are not even gonna connect. So I would just take this like real short, and then just let the back be longer and more disconnected. And then I'm gonna
So just make the side angle more severe.
Yeah, so instead of tilting my fingers like this, I would just angle it like that, you know? Okay, so I'm just gonna carve into that a little bit. Sorry, I think I'm just standing right in front of the camera. Okay. Okay, so that is how you do the haircut, minus any of the like fine tuning or blow drying or anything. But you can see she's got that like cool shorter bang. She's got like the choppier layers up top, and then she's got more like movement and like texture and wispiness through the ends. Okay, so what was that?
I really want to see it like styled.
I know.
Too.
Yeah, me too, Miss.
At least the bang.
Miss Martinez, why don't you just go ahead? We'll go to break and you just do the full style afterwards, and then we'll just see how much we can get done after that. If they
Okay.
practice it, or it can go into tomorrow. And you know, tomorrow afternoon they're going to get to work on a couple of different things. So
Okay.
even if it has to be into that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'll have some options.
I can show them really quick too, just the bangs, and then I can style the rest myself. Or would you
Yeah,
rather just go to break?
I think go to break and then show them the whole style after.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, they want to see it. It's all good.
Yeah.
Show them how you would create it. I'm good with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, are you saying show them after or just
After break. After break. Just
Oh,
do the
okay.
whole style after break.
Okay, cool. She'll be a lot drier by then too.
Just
But
missed her
it's
down. Like,
cool. Do you guys like it? What do you
I
think?
love it.
Yes, it
It's
is
really
cool.
cool.
Nice job.
Cute.
It's really nice.
Good job, Miss Martinez.
Thanks.